how do you build up an international competitive business? I will have a discussion with Jānis, how he has been built up his business in concrete flooring, very much being a success in export markets. Looking forward to that discussion. Hi, Jānis.
Hey, Anders.
Thank you very much for welcoming me to your office for this discussion. Really looking forward to this.
Welcome.
I think you've done a fantastic job with Primex in terms of developing that company. But let's start from the beginning. Who are you and why are you who you are? What's your background?
So, I studied actually macroeconomics at the university. And when I was studying, I got some exposure to the food industry overall. And because I was working to supply a food industry with raw materials, but I thought during the studies, I should be doing something, something more fundamental, something. I should create a company. And my thought was, because I had this exposure to the food business, my thought was, I saw that in 1997, which was when I started the company, and the condition of the food plants in Latvia, food production plants, was very poor. And some of the floors and other things there were in a bad shape. So I thought, okay, it may be a business that I supply to them a hygienic solution. Okay. And a very nice, shiny, high-quality floor so that they can produce it in a much better shape, because it was clear that they would have to do it once. And so I started the business. I bought special coatings from Finland, and I brought them over to the food industry here, installed them, and it was a very nice business. The coatings were super high quality, very shiny, and for like 6 months, we had a wonderful business with high margins. After 6 months, they started to call me, Jānis, maybe come and take a look. It's all peeling off. And so my business was in trouble. And I thought, okay, why? I have to get to the root cause, because otherwise, I will have no margin, no business. And so we started to look into it. And we understood there are many reasons. But some of the reasons was that the concrete on which we glued our high quality top material was too weak. And so we went to the gentleman installing the concrete and we said, sir, please, your concrete's too weak. We need something better. But they said, no, we have a certificate showing it's fine. And so we felt stuck. They have a certificate showing the concrete is fine, our coating is not working. So we decided we'll go into the concrete business ourselves. But in university, they said, look, you should really look at what is the latest science? What are the latest developments in the industry? We didn't know really how to do the concrete. We tried, but we didn't know. And so we decided to go to a scientific conference in Germany that was about industrial floors. And we listened to all the speakers that were there with all kind of various ways and methods how you do it. And we chose one. His name was Xavier Destre, very famous gentleman from Belgium that was promoting a way how to reinforce concrete with small fibers. And so, by these two accidents, and first that we started to put this coating, we couldn't fix it. Nobody could fix it, so we had to go into the concrete. And by meeting Xavier Destre, we got into the technologies that we are really developing. But you can also say that it was a kind of a values thing, because kind of our value from kind of very beginning has been face the problem, let's try to solve it holistically. It's not just usually whenever there's a problem, it's not just one. There's a deeper cause why it happens. And it's not right to say, oh, but I installed this material right and this was a perfect material, not my fault. It's his fault. It's not right. The right way is to really understand what is the root cause of the problem and solve it in a deeper level. And the solution is always go and look what others have thought about this, especially scientists. They have thought about so many things and developed so many things. There's always ideas.
It's interesting because you started off in saying that you actually studied economy.
It's true.
Right?
Yes.
And this is, you're getting into quite highly qualified engineering work here.
True.
I mean, how do you see that? I made the reflection myself now when seeing myself. I mean, we have a common educator in terms of Stockholm School of Economics,
True.
right? And I see myself now when my kids are becoming engineers. Actually, it is pretty many things that I don't know.
It's true.
Right? And now you are into the field of high-level engineering as an economist. How does that come? Or how do you? What is the future? What is the strength? What do you think?
I believe that a man has to have a common sense, especially to understand who are really the specialists in the field. And I'm devoting my time to listening in the conferences and listening and reading articles to understand who are the specialists, and then trying to attract them and working with them. And I think that a university can teach any subject indeed, and macroeconomics or mechanomics or whatever for that matter, definitely can teach that ability to read, understand, and just value what is good. And then, of course, obviously, they are the ones doing the research. They are the ones developing everything. And so my job, really, I view more as how can I find great leaders that can take the thing forward. If I find them, that's it. Then I just organize and see that they are in a good shape with all the necessary resources, and they know the kind of a strategic direction where to go.
But then you found this Belgian researcher.
Yes.
And I guess that it was not only you that wanted to invite him to develop his. So what made him to choose you? I mean, you were at that time a small producer. You had actually a failed product, as you told me.
Yes.
You couldn't really deliver to the client. You had a problem. How did you manage to get him to work with you?
Oh, actually, he didn't work exclusively in the beginning. He only didn't work with us. He worked with many.
Okay.
And he was supplying his invention, how to produce, using steel fibers, better concrete floors. We were the ones that chose him in the Baltic region. We were the first ones. And actually, we noticed, this technology is not used also really in Scandinavia. Mm-hmm. So early on, something like 2004, we started to work in Sweden and bringing this Belgian technology to Sweden. And so what we did essentially is we took the best that we can find in terms of technology that we can find worldwide, and we applied that technology to us. But what we also discovered is that when also you do the best-in-class technology, anyway, it has problems. Anyway, there's room for improvement. And so in something like 2006, we already saw very clearly the main problems of the Belgian technology. It still had, some technical issues, especially around the flatness, around cracking, around curling near the joints, some other technical issues. So we sat down and we said, look, okay, but there must be a better way. Okay, this is really nice, but there must be a better way, though. And so we put together a consortium using an EU program called Eureka. We put together a consortium of scientists, and we had a kind of a vision. If we take away the main problem of the concrete, which is kind of a technical problem called shrinkage, so that it kind of becomes shorter and then cracks and curls because of that shrinkage. If we can solve this problem, can't we have a better solution? And the scientists, sat around this issue, and so there was a few-year-long research project, out of which came this Primex product that we have now developed. And so essentially what we did is we looked at the problems. Again, we looked at the problems. What are the problems? How can we solve them? And how can we use science to do that? And then out of that came our patented product.
And where did you find those scientists at that time? I mean, they were not in-house, I guess.
Oh, they were not in-house. And we are still cooperating very widely with various scientists. So again, we went to the conferences. There are various conferences around the world. These scientists are speaking. And actually, my notice is many of them are craving for some industrial company that would look at what they are doing, appreciate it, polish it and put into production. So many of them worldwide. And I think it is very easy to attract scientists because they want to develop new products. And sometimes, they are in their lab and they have this idea and nobody reads. Maybe their mom reads their their working paper, and nobody else, and they are sad about that.
Maybe it's because I have a feeling that maybe the construction industry as such is quite conservative, right?
It's true.
You know what has been working for quite many years, and you really don't want to change. I can see now in Sweden, finally we start to allow to build high-rise building in wood.
Yes.
But it should be kind of steel and concrete before, due to fire and so on and so on. Because we had fires more than 100 years ago that were destroying cities, but it's kind of different now. And I think this conservativeness seems still to be very, very stuck in that one. Is that the way actually that you're in a quite conservative industry? If you are small, quick, agile, you can find pockets where you can innovate and move quite quickly. Is this a proof of that one?
I absolutely fully agree with you, and I think the conservative industry is kind of good and bad. It's bad because it's conservative, so any change takes a long time. But also for entrepreneur to be in a conservative industry actually is quite good, I don't have the same competitive pressure, frankly, as like Steve Jobs or Apple has. They make a new iPhone and a year later Samsung has copied it, and maybe not even a year later, and Samsung puts up something new or invents something, and okay, Apple is already there. It's very hard, you have this high speed. Construction, the speed is lower, which is actually why, for me, as coming from background when we're not at the level of the Apple when we started, is easier, actually. And so from that perspective, I don't complain too much. But of course, the industry is a bit conservative, it's true. But it's understandably so too, because you don't want cowboys creating buildings and then they collapse. So the conservatism is kind of well spent. The biggest problem in construction, in my opinion, is not the conservatism. That is fine, because conservatism you can overcome with testing, we can show with testing, engineers listen, and then you can go forward. The main problem with construction industry is that it's very disjointed. So there are many great companies, like car companies, like Volvo, for instance, in Sweden, that produces great cars. The cars are very streamlined. They are thought out in detail, how they are done, and they are lightweight, yet strong, very powerful, really great cars. In construction, but there is one company, Volvo, that develops them. In construction, everything is very disjointed. So there is one company, there is the owner that imagines, okay, I want this house. Then he goes to the architect. Architect draws a kind of a general drawing how the house should look like. Then that goes to engineer. Engineer calculates what are the loads, what are the resistance moments that the house should have. Then they go to the general contractor. General contractor, okay, estimates how much it would cost. Then he goes to the subcontractors, and the subcontractors estimate and how they build and how it would cost. Then the subcontractors, they go to the material suppliers. The material suppliers are also various, and there are sub-materials like in concrete. There's a concrete supplier, then the chemical supplier, steel supplier. All of these people are very disjointed. Somewhere there is a technical supervisor that overall looks, is the building correct or not from engineering point of view. But you see, there are tens of companies involved, and you want out of this to become like a shiny, beautiful, streamlined building? Very hard. And comparing to, for instance, like car manufacturers like Volvo, very hard to make a streamlined product out of this very disjointed industry. So what we see and what we want to do and change, and where we see a huge value add, is to streamline this like vertically. So we are a company that now is producing our own materials. No, first, let's start even before that. We are researching what is the best possible material. Then we are understanding how it works in a structure. Then we are designing these structures as engineers. Then we are producing this material. Then we are developing installation methods. What is the best installation method for this material? Then we develop the machinery, which helps us to install, and then we install everything. And we run quality supervision through all of these cycles using modern tools like apps and modern measurement techniques. So we believe that kind of a huge part of our success is simply that we are trying to streamline the industry in our segment, which is concrete.
So you have a control of the whole value chain, actually.
True.
It feels a little bit like sometimes I've seen in construction that, I mean, you have an architect having a brilliant idea, and then they make a draw, and then that is sent to the technical people and so on and so on. At the end of the day, it doesn't maybe even work to construct it in that way. Or maybe they can do it, but it's kind of 2-3 times more expensive to do that, whether it's a facade or that atrium or whatever. I mean, so this seems to be a challenge for the construction industry, not controlling the value chain then.
I fully agree with you. And there is for the architect, it's very hard to understand the little detail at which the subcontractors work. And for the subcontractors, as a subcontractor, sometimes I'm thinking, why wouldn't they listen a little bit more to the subcontractors? Yeah. Because we can show, you know, what is a really good way how to construct things. And there are very good approaches in project management that are arising, such as integrated project delivery and others, where actually people come together in this value chain and try to create one common product, like one Volvo car by a team that works for one purpose. But sadly, the most of the contracting world doesn't happen that way. Somebody makes a specification, it is more or less wrong, and then everybody follows down the line and just implements it. And a lot of value is lost in the way.
But can you imagine in the Volvo, in the assembly line, right, where the cars are coming out, and then suddenly they should put the door there, and the door doesn't really fit. I mean, that's what we're talking about, actually, right?
It happens all the time.
Oh, we need to kind of fix that door. Or
yeah. Let's quickly run to the hardware store and change the bolts. It'll be fine.
Yeah. I know that you have some really big clients, some really demanding clients, some of our big corporates in Sweden as your clients and in other markets as well. I mean, how did it go? How did you break into those companies? Because, I mean, it's not a sales cycle that you do a cold call and then you're in, right? They have a quite extensive purchasing process for this type of long-term investments.
True, and so we have had here many kind of delegations for inspection. People come here to understand, you know, what are our processes? Are the processes okay? You know, are our systems okay? And the people go in Sweden into a kind of a deep understanding. And I think the cultures you can overall distinguish in process cultures and result cultures. The process cultures, they are thinking if your process is right, then the end result must be right too. The results cultures ask, okay, what will you promise me to deliver? And I believe that you know, I mean, maybe the extremes are Sweden and, let's say, Russia. Russia would say, okay, what do you promise me? What do you promise that you will be there? Okay, give me my word. Okay, you go. They don't look so much into like detail and process how you do it. Sweden, but they ask stamp and signature and everything on the papers. Sweden would be more like process culture. So you would go in Sweden. We see that people go into detail. They try to understand, you know, how do you treat your workers? How do you treat your processes? What type of machinery are you using? What type of process is being there? And then they try to understand how is all fits together. And they think, okay, I don't have to really even think about the end result, because end result is going to be good if people exert, you know, good care of things, and if people have thought out about all the processes. And there are, in terms of documentation, for instance, that needs to be submitted in Sweden, which is a kind of a more like a process-driven country versus results-driven country, is much less and much more up to the point, because it's about the processes. So our kind of early focus on being process and being something that delivers value has been really great. That's why, you know, we have some really good Swedish corporations like IKEA, Volvo, and NCC, Skanska, and others working with us. But I think also what was very, very helpful for us was that with our technology, we can save CO2 emissions. The concrete overall is one of the most actually not one, it's the most polluting industry in the world, simply because of the sheer amount of concrete that's being used, and also because the process emits a lot of CO2 gas. And so it's responsible for 8% of global CO2 emissions, and is by far the most polluting industry, like 2 or 3 times more than the whole airline industry together. So it's really a big polluter. But our technology allows to save up to 70% of CO2 emissions. And that is something also that is big for Swedish corporates, because in Sweden, people want to do the good thing, they want to do the right thing for the environment, they want to do the right thing for the planet. So that's been a kind of a big part of the success story, and why it's kind of easy, it's kind of naturally easy for us to sell. There are some countries that are not so concerned about CO2, so we are lucky not to live next to them, if I can say.
Because sustainability, that is something that I have been, since I started in the Baltics 2016, I've been driving very much of that as an important, because I also see, as you say, how Swedish corporations, Nordic, and to some, they are kind of positioning themselves.
Yeah.
That, I mean, they really see that this is a competitive advantage. If we do this in a good way, I mean, and we are early onto it, it will open up a new market for us, right?
Yep.
And I'm trying to bring that kind of thinking here as well. And well, it was quite slow in the beginning, but now I see companies start to think this is not about regulation. It's not something forced upon. It can actually be an advantage, because I think in the beginning it was very much that, why does the European Union have all these legislations and reporting and so on? This is kind of just an admin burden for us. So hopefully that is changing. From you, when you look on your competitive advantage, because you have a very good product, in addition to that, it is taking away 70% of the CO2 emissions due to less concrete in it. I mean, how important is the sustainability angle in terms of getting into new plants, in terms of your export competitiveness?
I think it's super central. It's first of all super central for me as a private individual. And okay, I got into by accident into this business, but actually I can be in any business. I have education from Stockholm School of Economics. I can be a banker, you know, if I wish.
Some people end up there as well.
Exactly, yeah. Which is a nice business, you know, you make a lot of money, and a very nice office, and it's great. But I'm sticking with this concrete business because I believe that I want to do something that's good for sustainability. And I know that with this technology, you know, we can do a lot. So I want to be able to have my grandson or granddaughter here in my lap. And when she asks me, okay, you know, but what did you do for the sustainability, grandfather? I want to be able to look him or her in the eye and say, okay, I did my little thing. I tried to do my best. And that's personally very important for me. But apart from that, actually, it's also a good business once you talk about it, because there are so many companies that are interested in sustainability angle and they want to achieve it. And to look at it as an administrative burden, you can, but it's very kind of a very shallow and wrong way how to look at it. The right way is it's good for you, it's good for your karma and conscience, and good for your discussion with your grandchild. Definitely also good for business, because many companies want to cooperate with you because of that.
When I was 11 years old, I was actually on Swedish national television because they interviewed kids. What were their concerns about the future? How did they see about the future? Because sometimes we hopefully be grown up, and how will the world look like then? And I mean, I took really at that time the sustainability angle.
Yes.
And I remember a quote, because they made a book out of that once. I have it in writing as well. You know, the adult people only think about money. They don't think about the future of the planet, because I was very much into the environment.
Yes.
And then I ended up in banking. And therefore, I'm very happy now when our chairman in the bank, Mr. Wallenberg, he says there are two big trends that we need to get right. It's digitalization and sustainability.
Yes.
Because if we don't manage those, I mean, we don't have any reason to exist, actually, in a good way. Not only as a company, but as a society as well. So we really need to drive it. So happy that you started. We were starting off in those thinking quite early with the sustainability topic.
Yeah, and I think you are very fully right. And Mr. You have been very right. You have been kind of early Greta Thunberg, and and Mr. Wallenberg is completely right. And I also truly believe if we put sustainability as a kind of a core of what we are doing, we will be able to develop more sustainable and better products. And sometimes some people, I think, a bit mistakenly say, yeah, but okay, you know, what about sustainability? Actually, there are also natural cycles, there's sun's influence and whatever, so maybe we shouldn't worry about it too much, and who actually knows? And so you hear some people saying about all these things, and should we also spend money? We should enjoy the life, and, you know, based on fossil fuels, why not? You know, and but I think those are very mistaken and wrong approaches. Even if you allow a kind of a doubt if humans play such a big influence or not, anyway, we don't have a planet B. It's just prudent to be as conservative as possible to preserve this planet great for our grandchildren. Even if the sun plays an influence in our climate too, we anyway have to do our part and be prudent about how much we are emitting things. And looking around and looking, for instance, at the construction industry, but also looking at many other industries, I see so much space for innovation. Look at the car industry, what Elon Musk and Tesla have been able to do, what Volvo is and other brands are right now following, you know, how they are bringing up the sustainability and what is actually possible. But I believe much more is even possible today, even with the materials. And so I really believe we should spend more money on research and development, and that way we would get more out of the same buck, and we will have a sustainable products that makes us a great life, but also don't spoil the planet. We should spend more on research and development. I have very strong belief about that. R&D is underappreciated in many companies, what you can do with R&D. Because with R&D, there is a chance to produce the same product, but more efficiently and with a higher quality. And in strategy, thinking about how strategically companies compete, there are only kind of two things that the companies have to do right. They have to try to find a way how customers pay more, either higher price or they buy more because they appreciate the product more, which is two ways how you can get more money, or you lower the cost. You become more efficient in the production. So those are essentially the two needles that the companies have to create more wealth for employees, more wealth for society, and a better product. And R&D can work in both ways. It can find the ways how you can be more efficient, and it can find ways how you can create a more appealing product. And I think to produce something that everybody else produces, like without R&D, it's a very hard business, because then you can only compete by reducing your profit margin, which is possible, doable, but hard business. Much easier business is if you can keep a good margin that is healthy, but also at the same time create a product that is great for the end user and customer and great for society. And R&D is critical for that.
How much do you invest every year in R&D? You have your own quite newly R&D facility as well, right?
Yes, yes. So we invest quite a lot for construction company. I think we are, I don't know of any other concrete subcontractor that has a sizable R&D by themselves. But we invest more than 2 million euro is our current budget.
Every year.
And as the company grows, we are growing every year, we intend just to increase it in line with our growth. 2 million euro, that is something right now for us like 2.5% of our total sales. and we are continuing and investing that money more and more.
And you continue and work with universities as well?
We absolutely work with universities. We have research partnerships with, I think, all Latvian technical universities. Also, we worked with KTH. There are very good groups there, with Danish Technical University, University of Arizona, the University of Wisconsin. There's a very good group in Berlin with whom we are working. So we work extensively. We are looking for those scientists that are in our field and that want to move further. And with them, we are having a great blast cooperating. We're working with a French unit together as well. So we are very international in how we are running our research.
Interesting. When it comes to R&D in among Latvian companies, or in general, I mean, I know that there is an ambition, a mission Latvia, which is that to put innovation in front of everything when it comes to attract new investors. I mean, how far are we on that route in Latvia, would you say, in terms of being R&D driven country and among the corporates here?
I think we are at the beginning of that road, and there are companies as well, just like us, that are on this road quite somewhere. But overall, as a country, we are just at the beginning. And I believe that there are I think the central issue maybe is that in Latvia, we didn't place until now such a big emphasis on that we need to create great exporting companies. When companies sell in the local market, then you can have good sales just because you do a good job as a service company. Let's say you create a nice shop with a nice atmosphere inside, and some people will come because of the atmosphere, because of the attitude of the CEO or the salesperson, because of the way how the shop is done and everything. People will come to you. The coffee shop, they will come, and so you can have a business. But if you are making a larger business that is more international, I can be very charming, but I can't reach all the customers. So it has to be already something more of a substance. It has to be R&D funded, and so the product differentiation, like a very clear advantages of the product, become very important. But in Latvia, maybe there are not so many exporting companies right now, and so clearly our export levels as a percent of per capita GDP, or in absolute terms, we are nowhere near the Swedish level. And I believe that if we as a country put more emphasis on becoming a great exporting country, that would drive need for many more companies to become much more R&D intensive. Because then they would move away from being a little nice shop that services a local market where R&D is actually not important, but your charm and presentation is, to a more hard-faced company that is actually has to have R&D.
So what you're saying is that if Latvia or Latvian corporates have more of an export-driven strategy, they would better see the need for investing more in R&D to get a more unique product.
Absolutely. And I believe even as a country as a whole, Latvia has to have a more clear export focus. I believe that the success of Sweden is in many parts because it had a very clear industrial policy, starting definitely with the Wallenbergs as a huge impact on all that. But the country has always had a very clear industrial policy, because when you do industrial production, and when the industrial production is done at scale, which by necessity happens when you export, because compared to Latvia, Sweden is big, but actually it's a small country.
Market. We need to go abroad.
You need to go abroad. And so it's for us too. And when a country is export focused, it develops very well. We can see the same also in Asia. So in Asia as well, we can see right now, so many countries are becoming rich. So we read about Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. We can see right now the rise of China and how these countries are becoming rich. And so we say, oh, Asia is rising. not entirely true. There are countries in Asia that are rising, but there are countries that are stagnating. For instance, Singapore is on the same island as Malaysia. Malaysia, not so nice. Singapore, great. Why? I believe that you can distinguish the Asian countries that are export focused and that are local market focused. If Malaysia, for instance, is local market focused, so they have supported their entrepreneurs to create great products for local market. So they have a Proton car in Malaysia. And the entrepreneur is a nice gentleman, I'm completely sure, but he's shielded a bit from the external competition. He gets the government subsidies. So finally, what is Proton? They are just assembling some Japanese parts in a car shop, and his added value is actually very small because he doesn't really have to compete. He doesn't really have to develop a great product. Whereas, for instance, South Koreans that put export as a kind of a main emphasis, or Japanese before them, or Chinese right now, that are creating great export valued cars, they are actually developing industries that are rising up in the ability and production. So I think that all the countries can be divided in two general parts. One that are supporting business people that are more like locally focused, and others that are supporting business people that are more like exports and innovation and therefore innovation focused. And so I believe that in Latvia, the road to having more innovation, first of all, also comes from us reorienting us as a country towards more export-driven, industrial, or export service, such as IT service support. Because if we could do that, that by necessity would bring immediately the innovation as well.
Sweden was your first and not big, but you have continued to export. You mentioned the US. So what markets are you working in now? And you work in different ways in different markets?
Yes. So we are working in all the Nordics and Baltics very intensively. And there we have one way how we go to market. So in those markets, we have our own workers that are actually installing the solar. So we take the whole supply chain. In United States and in other more faraway markets, we have local companies that are from US that are actually our licensing partners that license our technology. And we would do every upstream except the worker. So we would still do the engineering, the materials development, technical supervision, all of that. But we would have a local company who uses our product. Like in the United States, I just mentioned. So we just finished a huge robotic warehouse production unit for Walmart, the big American retail chain. That was done by our licensing partner Litco, which is the biggest American contractor in the field of concrete. And we supplied there the materials, the design methodology, together with our American design partner, Professor McDonald from University of Wisconsin. And then together with Litco, we were able to cast the floor. But we supplied a lot in terms of overall process and how to do it in the correct way.
Are the materials then produced here in Latvia and exported, or can they produce also the materials on license in the US? Or
yeah, so we are this heavy materials, so not all can be transported everywhere. So it has to be local, and we also have many components in these materials inside. But the total final product is then done on place in United States, like in that project in South Carolina, and that's it. Yeah.
What's the most exotic market that you're working in then?
I think South Africa is definitely quite exotic. Even more exotic is India as well. We've done jobs in India. We've done job in Nigeria once as well. That I think is maybe by far the most exotic market. Before the war, we used to work in Russia, Belarus, but not right now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, India can probably be a little bit of a challenging market.
Oh, it's very challenging. It can be challenging, yeah. So there are many ways how they are doing differently, but at the same time, it's also a very strong market because India right now is rising. I really believe that the Prime Minister Modi is bringing good change to the country, and there's a good mood for development and rising. And I can see also that many companies are shifting their production units from China to India as well. So I believe in India as a great market going forward.
I agree with you. And have you managed to find a good partner, for example, then in India? Because it's very much dependent that you find a good client, a good partner that can use your recipe. And
we have great partners in India. Absolutely, that is how we are growing there. Yes, we don't have our own people. You have to have local partners in India. I'm completely sure about that.
Yeah. I think all those markets that you mentioned, they are quite open. I know that in India there are regulations. For example, in the retail business, it's been very tricky for a company like IKEA to open up because they're protecting kind of the small mom and pop stores at the corner and so on and so on. But I think and that makes also they get a very inefficient kind of the whole value chain with the cooling and so on, because you need to do investments, and when you don't get scale, it's tricky. But and it reminds me about if you go back maybe to the 60s, 70s, one need to adapt your export business due to regulations in different countries. So, the biggest industrial city we had done in Sweden, that was, in terms of number of workers, that was Gothenburg on the west coast. Can you imagine what the second biggest cities of employees for a Swedish company was in the 60s and 70s?
That's a trick question. I don't know, really.
It is a trick question.
I mean, Stockholm obviously is right now, especially for the IT industry and everything, but that probably is too simple answer.
Yeah, it's too simple. But it starts with the same letter, actually. It's Sao Paulo in Brazil.
Ah, wow.
And the reason was that Brazil, at that point of time, had very high trade barriers.
Right.
So in order to get access to the Brazilian market, which is a big market, we had to build a lot of production in Brazil. So in my previous job in the bank, then we have an office in Brazil. So I've been visiting Scania in Brazil, and their production unit in Brazil or in Sao Paulo, it's virtually a copy of what is in Södertälje in outside Stockholm then. So I think, so as an exporting company, you need to play a little bit on all the strings of the guitar, so to speak, in order to make it work in different countries, regulations on. I guess you noticed that as well.
Absolutely, and that is why we have several kind of ways and methods how we are going to market. There's one way that we do full everything here in the north of Europe. There is a kind of a combo way, for instance, in Israel, where some people from Latvia work on the working visas, but we are combining them with the local Israelis. And then there is a more pure way, like in the United States, and all depends on the regulations and kind of what is the best way culturally and historically how to approach these markets. And in each market, we have to be a bit more careful and understanding and see, we have to have somebody that can translate to Spanish also in the United States. Because many construction workers, they would prefer to speak Spanish. So there are these things, and so we have to adapt. And countries are at a different level of their development. And I think Brazil is an interesting example of a country that has also thought about a lot. How do you develop the country overall, and how do you create industry within the country? And the trade barriers is one way. Right now they are kind of past that, and they are thinking about other methods how to do it. We are definitely not in the trade barriers here in European Union. We are about the free trade. But the fundamental question that the Brazilians faced in the 60s and 70s, how do you get industrial enterprises to start, still remains. And I think why Brazilians started with the trade barriers in 60s and 70s, didn't they understand that it actually increases the cost of their product? I'm sure they did, but they also didn't see another way how to start industrial enterprise.
How to build it up in your own country.
Yes.
Yeah. And they are big markets, so they could afford that.
Yes.
Meaning they knew, I guess if Latvia would do that, I mean, not too many would put car production here necessarily in order to export to the market. Then you skip the market, right?
Exactly. And which is why for Latvia, actually, there is not this choice. But then we are back to the question, okay, we don't have the choice of the tariff barriers, what the Brazilians did in the 60s and 70s in order to attract significant industrial capacity to the country. What do? I believe that coming back to what you said, I think the R&D is actually one of the really good answers, because R&D is fully allowed as a subsidy. Actually, everybody wants more R&D. Every politician talks about that. But R&D is also a way how to help your companies to grow and develop. And I wish that the politicians in Latvia would understand that much more clearly, because if you spend more on R&D, and there are companies, obviously you have to have both. You have to have R&D and you have to givers and takers in R&D. So you have to have also these export-driven companies. But if you spend more, then these companies can enjoy larger advantage in terms of their product, and they can grow and they can become richer and they can develop more. And in the question, how do you become industrialized? How do you raise the productivity? I think R&D today is practically the easiest and the best form of subsidy that you can give in order to help your companies to become better. I think in Latvia we also spent unnecessarily funding to support businesses that could only be done locally, which was a great idea. Like, I know we supported some like local tourism, so we made some small houses, like guest houses or hotels, and which is nice. But those businesses never will scale. They will never scale. And I even asked the question, for some of those, will they be able to make a profitable business out of that house that we supported? Some yes, some maybe also no, and some are struggling to make the ends meet because the tourism flow is not there. And why it's not there? Because the people are not rich enough to go and spend their vacations. They rather stay at their own house. And why they're not rich enough? Because there are not enough companies that pay good wages and have a lot of profit. But those can be only had in the export. So I think that sometimes you have to think about the country's development as a bit of a chess. So you have to make a more like a long-term strategic move, which is really support the export, and then the kind of a smaller businesses, the shops, the restaurants, the guest houses, they will come.
Benefit.
Because once you make that money, what are you going to do with it? Sit on it? No, you go, nice meal, you take your family to a guest house on the weekend, and then they can charge the money and become rich. But to support that as a consumption, I feel is a mistake. And so I believe that those countries are prospering, which are disciplined export supporters.
Thanks a lot, Jānis, for really good, interesting thoughts. What I will bring with me from this is that it's about to have a good export strategy, not just as a company, but as a country. And in order to be competitive in that one need to invest long-term, and that investment long-term, that is in R&D, and then working together with the academia as well to find the smartest ideas in order how to make a business out of those ideas. And then actually use the red jackets, cooperate in order to go to export markets, learn from others that have been there before, and potentially start up with markets that are closer to you, where it's kind of quite easy to do business. And then with that as a foundation, because having those type of brand names that you mentioned before, the IKEAs, the Walmart and so on, if you have them on your client list, it's very much easier to go out to reach kind of the next level of clients, I assume, as well. I would take that with me and as an inspiration for me for the future working with Baltic corporates. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.